This is the OnePlus 9 Pro, and by all counts, I think this is the phone that the company has wanted to make for years. That product that will establish them more as part of the cool kids where we see more popular players like Samsung and Apple. Companies that have gained enough brand recognition to become status symbols that have earned customer loyalty for years. The question is if this is the phone that we've wanted them to make. This is the company that's become famous for their flagship killers, products that have defied that establishment with better value at acceptable compromise. There's even proof that the strategy worked, as we've seen companies like Google, Apple, Samsung just diversify their lineups in order to launch their own sort of affordable flagship. Now, in their defense, that flagship killer does exist with the OnePlus 9, which is such a dramatic improvement from before that, don't worry, that one deserves its own separate review. The Pro is more a showcase of everything the company can do, and I think the only way to judge it correctly is to forget the past. I get the impression that OnePlus is so certain that the 9 Pro is capable that this is the most expensive phone they've ever made. This price bracket is tough because we even debate the Apples and the Samsungs that created it. That would mean that this phone is better than those, not just for the price, and really, there's only one way to find out. I'm Jaime Rivera with Pocket Now, and this is our full review. Even if we're going clean slate with this review, the OnePlus 9 Pro seems like a blend of many successful ideas that we've seen before. I think Huawei was first at calling any of its phones a Pro and actually owning the title. Their reputation for cheap phones was so bad in the early days that I wouldn't even care to review any of them before the Nexus 6P or the P10. But then we saw the company just drift so dramatically towards quality and capability that they became a driving force that was hard to be ignored. I mean, the P40 Pro Plus was my favorite camera on a phone last year. It also demonstrated the importance of co-branding with photography experts like Zeiss on Nokia's or Leica on Huawei's to prove that they were taking photography seriously if done right. What's different with OnePlus is that this would be the youngest company to try to do all of this, and for Hasselblad, a second chance at getting that right. Visually, I'm gonna call this my favorite design on a OnePlus phone ever. No more aggressive camera humps to wobble on a table, and a far lighter build that feels more balanced and cohesive in the hand. Now, I'm not sure if it's the cutout or the branding on it, but this phone seems like one of those classic Chevys from the 50s and 60s. I think the morning mist color plays a huge role in that appearance from the top, but the bottom is a mirror that made filming this phone a nightmare, so I apologize in advance. It does have this cool way of making fingerprints blend with the gradient, but I do recommend that you consider other matte color options that are available. Still, staples like the 3-way mute slider are still here to remind us that this is a OnePlus phone. Now, from the front, this would be the company's best display on a phone. Dubbed its Fluid Display 2.0, we're talking OLED with less curves, 10-bit color, 1300 nits of brightness, Quad HD Plus resolution, and LTPO, so variable refresh rate can go from 1 to 120 Hz based on your usage, and we have up to 360 Hz touch sampling for gaming. Certifications include HDR10 Plus from the panel, and even Dolby Atmos from the speakers for content consumption. AirPods Max. Let me start with a basic disclaimer. Oh, and by the way, this is Qualcomm's new acoustic platform for improved wireless performance. And since we've already begun talking specifications, in typical OnePlus fashion, we have the latest ones with the amount of RAM and storage directly tied to how much you're willing to pay. The latest Wi-Fi and Bluetooth IP68 resistance, dual flavors of 5G, and even a dual cell battery that enables Warp Charge 65T, meaning crazy fast 65-watt PD from the charger that's actually included in the box, and 50-watt wireless charging that's only possible if you grab the optional stand. And by the way, also that wireless charging is now reversible for accessories. That said, I have a feeling you won't need to charge this phone much. Testing any phone's 5G in New York is rough, and even if Google Fi is still not pushing blazing fast speeds, they were good enough given the city's infrastructure, where phone calls were loud and crisp even on subway stations. But this would be the first OnePlus phone I'd test that isn't dual SIM. It might just be that the T-Mobile approach now became regional, so just keep that in mind. Regardless, after 10 days of testing, this proved to be an all-day phone every single time, no matter how hard I text it. A lot of it has to do with Oxygen OS on top of Android 11. Even if OnePlus is not as quick as Google at pushing you the new version of Android, they've been the close number 2 for the past 2 years. It's fast, aesthetically pleasing, includes the Google feed on the launcher, and then the power button now leads to the power menu, but then it has its own set of perks that adds extra layers of flexibility. You can easily switch to Amazon's Assistant, for example. You have reading mode, which is still one of my favorite features, and then you've got Zen mode to force you to take a break from the phone every now and then. Now, maybe my favorite is to have facial recognition only show you notifications on the lock screen when it detects my face, and the fact that the optical fingerprint scanner on the display can also be used to lock specific applications according to your convenience. But alright, if anything, the first part of this review proves that this is very much a OnePlus phone and everything that we're used to, which is great. I've always been a huge fan of using them and was accustomed to accepting the okay camera because the price was just too good. Now we have a Hasselblad collaboration and a retail ticket to match. And if you were looking at the spec sheet, OnePlus is not playing around. The primary sensor is one of the best that Sony makes right now. The ultra-wide is also the best on any phone right now, which also doubles as a macro camera. And even if the telephoto is not designed to honor all of the lunar marketing prowess that Hasselblad is known for, it looks pretty good on paper. Now, the results are, well, good, depending on your scenario. If you have enough light, you'll get the typical photos you'll expect from any phone with great color, contrast, and detail. In close-ups or macro shots, you get some really good dynamic range, though it can blow out colors when taxed too hard. The problem is that the slightest gloom will somehow have the camera software favor light over the shutter. This makes it really hard to capture detail unless you have a very steady hand, and the darker it gets, the more the color tuning gets in the way of detail. And sure, inconsistencies are expected when switching focal lengths since each is a different sensor, but in some cases that even affects saturation. It's as if the software magnifies the grain and sometimes makes a dark vehicle look cartoony. I mean, if you like to take photos of animals, you'll find yourself frustrated at times. I get the impression that the software wants to push that Hasselblad contrast so much that it forgets that all of it is pointless without detail. That means that obviously at night, finding detail only becomes more difficult. Some photos are good and some are not. The way light reflections are handled could have a lot to do with it, again because of the slower shutter that's being used. You'll see what I mean in portrait shots where unless your hand is ultra steady, detail will be completely lost. Same story with selfies where I struggle to find any shot that I can say I like as skin tones are just completely gone over this sort of hue the camera is trying to bring and how it handles light. In video, sure, you have 8K, and I love that the ultra-wide sensor is good enough to assist, pushing a far better crop than even Samsung. You also have 4K at 60 and even 120 to get some really smooth cinematic shots. Just make sure you have enough light as that will require more shutter work. And stabilization can be somewhat inconsistent though, which could be a software bug, with some videos working well and some not so well, so again, just keep that in mind. Really, my problem is having selfie video that's 16 times lower in resolution than what the primary camera can do, throwing the versatility of what you can do with this phone just out the window if you care about being able to frame yourself in home videos. In photography, I feel that there is a software update needed urgently, and then in selfie video, I mean, the megapixels are here, and if the OnePlus Nord can do 4K, like seriously, this flagship should be able to do so as well. To conclude, what can I say? I think that OnePlus has achieved a lot of what it intended with this launch. If the desire was to prove that it could launch a true flagship that competes against the premium sector, the hardware is all here, and all it needs is a bit more software tuning to become one of the best Android phones you can buy right now. You know what the problem is? It's called perception, and it has a lot to do with how young the brand is. I asked at least 5 friends that were average consumers to pick between the 9 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro or the Galaxy S21 Plus, which are almost the same price, and none of them picked the OnePlus. Sadly, if the 9 Pro is not really a better phone or doesn't have a halo feature that makes those phones look bad, once you remove the value proposition out of the equation, it's really hard to sell it. Like, sure, in cases like photography, it has improved a bit, but not completely. And then if the company chooses to trail behind in things like selfie video at a time when social media is such a huge part of our lives, then why should you pay more for the 9 Pro if even the regular iPhone 12 can tackle these things for less money? If there was one product that needed the whole never settle mentality, it was this one. If you're a OnePlus fan, I have no problem in recommending the 9 Pro. It's definitely the best phone they've ever made, and we know that the company is speedy about software updates to address the shortcomings. Now, if you're not, you might want to consider what features you care about most before picking this over any of its flagship competitors, which now pretty much cost the same money. Let us know what you think about the OnePlus 9 Pro in the comments down below, if you agree with our assessment or not, and follow us on social media and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. You can also follow me on my personal handles to see me want to love this phone a lot more and wait for the software updates like there's no tomorrow. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like what you saw. I'm Jaime Rivera. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.